Hello everyone, I'm Rob the Robot from the Adobe Education team, and I would like to welcome you to the Inject Creativity Live Show. This is an online show for educators interested in digital creativity. This show is live on the Adobe for Education YouTube channel, as well as other social media, and past recordings can be viewed via bit.ly/adobe-inject. Any teacher, whether an Adobe user or not, in any K-12 or higher education sector and any subject area is welcome. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Inject Creativity Live Show, the online show aimed to inspire educators to enhance digital literacy, communication, and most importantly, creativity skills for themselves and for their students. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, Tim, and a special welcome to everyone who's joined us live on Wednesday, the 19th of May, 2021 via the Adobe for Education YouTube channel, as well as the Australasian Adobe and Education Facebook group. We encourage you to say hi in the chat and let us know where you are from and where you teach.
While you're in the chat sharing a bit about yourself, we'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. We respect and honour Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present and future, as well as all Indigenous people from the lands we reach out to during this event.
We acknowledge their stories, traditions and living cultures. We acknowledge them as the first peoples in our lands, the first scientists and the first creatives, and we commit to building a brighter future together.
During this episode, Adobe Education leader Steve O'Neill from Perth will be with us.
And our education thought leader for this episode is Dan Hasler from Cut Through Coaching and Consulting.
We're also going to be sharing some information about a new education partner for Adobe.
And we will officially be launching the 2021 Apac Adobe Education Summit to be held in late September.
Before we hear from our guests, let's see who has joined us live for this show so far and has said hi in the chat.
While Tim checks that out, note that we're getting the chat feed from those of you on Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube, but not always from Twitter. So if you're joining us from Twitter and you'd like your comments, questions and your answer to the coming quiz question posted and published by us during the chat show, you may like to jump out of Twitter and jump in to the Adobe for Education YouTube channel at youtube.com/Adobe for Education.
Well, Erin, I'd like to welcome Russell Cairns, who has joined us via LinkedIn for this session, saying, love hearing from Dr. Tim. That's great, Russell. And what's he saying here? Love the new digital literacy AC ACARA draft curriculum. Oh, there you go. He's throwing in a plug for the new digital literacies draft. Well, that's good to know. We're not talking about that today, Russell. Maybe we'll need to talk about that, be another topic later on. But Russell is a fantastic teacher and leader with the New South Wales Department of Education. And it's lovely to have you with us, Russell. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
We're not seeing too much else in the chat at the moment, so we might come back to the chat very soon.
We'll keep a weather eye on it.
Yeah, please do say hello to us. Let us know where you're from, what you teach. It'd be great to get to know who we're talking with today.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Erin, last week I visited a school for the first time since March 2020. Every Victorian Department of Education and Training secondary school has access to the Adobe Creative Cloud, but only a handful of primary schools have been provided with licenses. I visited one of them and spent a couple of hours with some Year 5s at Springside Primary in Caroline Springs.
What did you get up to, Tim?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Erin. They were all very experienced at Spark Video, so I showed them how to use Spark Post, and they worked in small groups to create a flyer promoting one of the 11 important steps for good hand hygiene.
Nice. I see, was that there some examples that were up on the screen just then as well they were showing us?
I bet you didn't know there were 11 steps for good hand hygiene.
So if you're interested in having a member of the Adobe Education team do a virtual or potentially a face-to-face visit with your students and or your colleagues, fill out the Contact Adobe form at bit.ly/Adobe_contact.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Rathke.
Thanks, Rob. Let's now welcome our good friend and the Inject Creativity Live moderator and techie whiz, Jerry Wong. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I will be looking out for your comments and questions in the chat and posting the most relevant ones. To encourage you to use the live chat, I have an Adobe-related quiz question for you.
Oh, I think we need to have the quiz slide up there. Erin, you're going to bring that up?
There it is. I had one job.
All right.
Now, name Adobe's most recent education partner with over 120 million registered users.
Wow, 120 million registered users. No wonder we're making them one of our partners. That is awesome. Let's just see if anyone has responded already.
Timothy Crosgrove has joined us.
Welcome to all the way from Toronto. What's he saying? He's saying, hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone from Toronto. Let me guess. It is 3 degrees at the moment in Toronto. Am I right? Or am I not right? And
a fair guess. I think that particular organization may have a few more than 120 million. I reckon.
Oh, Tim's suggesting it's Netflix.
He's making Netflix. That would
not quite.
That would be.
No, they're not really well known as an education partner. But he has corrected us. It's 18 degrees. It's practically summer. It's practically
balmy. Actually, I think that's warmer than it is here right now in Ipswich.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. And considering it's probably 3:30 in the morning or something for you in Toronto.
Timothy got it.
Timmy's having another go here. Khan Academy, congratulations.
Good on you, Timothy.
There we go. A round of applause. We got there eventually. Well done, Tim Cosgrove.
You did much better than me, Tim. All I could remember was that the logo was green, and I refused to Google it to check. I racked my brain. I couldn't think of it. So well done for pulling that off the top of your head.
We'll be sharing more about this wonderful new partnership later in the show.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Rathke.
Let's welcome our guests for this episode. Steve, come on to the stage for us. There he is. Welcome to the show. For those who haven't met you before, tell us how long you have been an Adobe Education leader for, where you teach, and your role.
Well, I've been Adobe Education leader since last year, and I teach at Berger Secondary College in Perth. And is that coming through as echoey, is it?
Yeah, we're getting a little bit. It's not too bad, though. That's when we practiced.
Yeah. Mostly coming through at my end, sounding a bit strange like that, but as long as you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad on our end.
I teach at Berger Secondary College, and I'm also a year coordinator, so I'm responsible for about 200 year 10s.
Terrific. Excellent. I remember being a year 10 coordinator myself, so I know what a big responsibility that is. Well done.
And now, thank you for joining us, Steve. Now, if we could bring Dan up. Dan, it's great to have you back on the show tonight. Tell us about cut-through coaching and consulting.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having me again. Basically, cut-through coaching helps people to thrive professionally and personally. And I've got a background as an educator, so a lot of work we do is with schools, but my most exciting project right now is we've just been engaged by the Australian Olympic team to help them and their families kind of go through this next period of uncertainty as to whether the games are even going to help go ahead. So that's really interesting. So that's where we're at the moment.
I bet. Yeah, there'd be the whole social aspect of whether or not they're going to go into quarantine, how long it's going to be, and who's going to go. Wow, there's a lot of facets to that.
There are.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been fascinating to follow your professional journey over the years that I've known you. But before I knew you, you were a phys ed teacher. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. Yeah. So it's been something of a bizarre journey.
That's awesome. So you've kind of got a foot in the corporate world, a foot in the professional elite sporting world, and a foot in the education world. I didn't know you
Absolutely.
There you go. That's great. And it's great to have you on board with us. And thank you for your contributions that you've already done and what you will be continuing to do for this show.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Steve, can you give us a teaser about what you'll be sharing with us later in the show?
Well, I've always been really passionate about using multimedia, in particular sound and music. So I'm going to have a bit of a look at some of the ways that I've used that in some of my classes, especially in the past year or two.
Yeah, especially the echoey sound. That's going to, but it's all right.
Oh, no.
We're coping with it. We're coping with it.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So, Dan, rescue us. What will you be sharing?
Yeah, I'm going to. So, a couple of months ago when I was on, I spoke about one critical, essential element of authentic engagement, and today I'm going to share another one which builds on that idea of belonging, which we spoke about previously. I'm going to talk about the second, if you like, most critical element if we want people to authentically engage in their work, be they students, adults, whoever.
Fantastic. Nice. Well, we're looking forward to hearing from both of you later in the show.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
And we're excited to announce the recent launch of a major partnership between Adobe and the Khan Academy.
So the Khan Academy is a non-for-profit educational organisation created in 2006 by Sal Khan with the goal of creating a set of online tools that help educate students.
Originally focused on the teaching of mathematics, now with over 120 million registered users, the Khan Academy provides resources for a wide range of curriculum areas.
The goal of this partnership is to support the development of new, free online learning resources that foster creative and critical thinking skills, helping all students reach their potential and ultimately be better prepared for the future.
The partnership includes a new course on the Adobe Education Exchange called Teach Creatively with Adobe and Khan Academy, as well as a series of teaching resources. Look up bit.ly/Adobe-Khan-course21 for more information about the course.
The aim of the new course and the teaching resources is to help teachers learn how to use creative activities and projects to drive student engagement, deepen their learning, and set them up for future success. This video explains more.
Millions of students and educators worldwide have used Khan Academy to learn and practice core academic content across subjects. Adobe, meanwhile, is the leader in tools and curriculum that allows students to practice creativity, communication, and digital skills. We're so excited to bring these two organizations together with a new, easy-to-use, adaptable, and innovative curriculum. In this new self-paced course for educators, Teach Creativity with Adobe and Khan Academy, we'll introduce you to over 100 lessons, activities, and projects that combine Khan Academy content with creative extensions using Adobe tools. You'll dive deep into pedagogy and instructional design. Hear from real educators across K-12 and higher ed.
It's a beautiful blend of informative and engaging content
who have transformed their students' learning outcomes with these innovative approaches. Plus, with an end-of-course assignment, you'll have the option to receive a digital credential and certificate for professional development hours. So, whether you want to teach literature, science, history and social sciences, art history, math, or storytelling with Pixar in a box, this free course will teach you to weave core content and creative projects in flexible, exciting, and engaging ways. Sign up today on the Adobe Education Exchange.
Did you notice, Erin, that Juliet Bentley was featured in that video? Our very own Juliet Bentley from Queensland.
Oh, I must have blinked and missed her. You can't miss I'll have to rewatch the video again and see where I can spot her.
Yeah, so it's great to have some local content with that particular program. And
well, she was doing amazing contributions last year as well to the Adobe Education Exchange. So, yeah, she's well worth checking out. She's amazing.
Absolutely. Anyway, let's move on. We've got the slide there. It's talking about the Adobe Get to Know Your Adobe webinar series. So, Erin, tell us about how that particular series has been going.
Well, led by Adobe education leaders and Adobe solution consultants, the Get to Know Your Adobe Apps webinar series now is featuring recordings of some outstanding presentations that are well worth sharing with your colleagues.
We have completed all 3 sessions for middle school K-12 teachers and senior secondary teachers, and session 3 for higher ed is going to be recorded next week.
Find out more about these live and recorded webinars at bit.ly/Adobe-webinars21.
All right, I think we're about to hear from our Adobe education leader.
Hi folks, we are about to be inspired by an AEL, an Adobe education leader. AELs are passionate about the use of Adobe tools to inspire creative learning and teaching experiences in the delivery of either primary, secondary or post-secondary curricula. The first step to becoming an AEL is to be an ACE, an Adobe Creative Educator, via edx.adobe.com/adobe-creative-educator. You don't have to be an Adobe expert to be an ACE, just a teacher interested in engaging students through creative digital learning experiences. The ACE program is a free international micro-credentialing program. It only takes a few hours to earn your level 1 badge, and the focus is on creativity rather than Adobe. Please share this program with your colleagues and get involved. Who knows, you may one day also become an Adobe education leader.
And it is a delight to welcome Adobe education leader Steve O'Neill from Perth to the show. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Tim. Now, as mentioned, I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I teach at Berger Secondary College, and during the week, I look like that guy on the screen there. On weekends, I tend to look a little more like this. I've always been very passionate about music and sound in particular, and that's come through with a lot of what I teach in the classroom. And I've been interested in digital sound for quite some time, since, well, probably about 20 years or so ago. And I used to use an application on my computer called Cool Edit Pro for editing sound. And Cool Edit Pro is an application that was quite popular at the time, and eventually it got acquired by Adobe and rebranded as Audition. And since then, Adobe has taken what was already a fantastic application and improved on it, and tied it in rather neatly with the other Adobe Creative applications. So if you have the Adobe Creative Cloud applications, then you would have Audition with it. And I often hear educators talking about different applications in the Creative Cloud suite, such as Photoshop and Dreamweaver, but Audition, despite being one of my favorite applications, is one that I maybe don't hear quite so much about. So that's one of the reasons why I thought I'd focus on it a little today, as well as some of the other things that I do. Now, last year, in one of my classes, I took over a multimedia class at the school I was at, and there wasn't really an established program for that class. So I thought, well, that's a bit of a challenge as far as lots of work to do, but it's also an opportunity because it meant that I can more or less start from scratch and build the program around the things that I'm passionate about and things I'm familiar with. So I based around a book I was reading not long before that I'm sure a lot of you would be familiar with, The Island of Dr. Moreau, the old H.G. Wells novel. And if you're not familiar with that, one of the main plot points of that story is, I guess, a mad scientist experimenting on animals and creating strange, weird, and wonderful species. And I thought, well, teenagers like being creative and teenagers like things that are weird too, so why not combine the two in my class? So I came up with a series of interlinked projects that were making use of Adobe software applications. And their basic brief was that this doctor, named him after Montgomery, one of the other characters in the book, was creating a zoo with these weird and wonderful animals. So the students, they had a series of tasks such as using Illustrator to create a logo for this zoo, using Photoshop to combine various animals to create their new species that were going to be visible at this zoo, using Audition to modify and combine sounds in unusual ways so that they can get the new animals that are going to be at this zoo. And I got them to use Adobe Premiere to create a 30-second television advertisement and a 10-second YouTube ad for the zoo. And later on, they also had tasks that were using InDesign and Dreamweaver and Adobe Animate. Now, I'm just going to start by showing an example of something that one of the students did last year with this 30-second television advertisement. And this little advertisement pulled together all of the things that the student had done previously. So she was, you can see there the logo that she created in Illustrator, and a little bit of photo editing in there, some of the sound editing, and ultimately the video editing. So I'll just play that for you.
Sorry, Steve, we're just not getting good audio from when that's being played. So we'll just enjoy the visuals of it, and maybe you can talk us through what we're seeing.
Pulls together some of the various tasks that that particular student had done. Now, when you're going to be doing any sort of multimedia editing in a classroom, one thing I'd strongly recommend is making sure students are using headphones, partly because that helps the students to work with this or to hear what they're doing. They can hear their sound editing work properly. But probably most importantly, when students are being very creative with sound, you don't necessarily want to hear 25 students worth of creativity all at once. So it keeps the teacher sane. So it doesn't have to be anything particularly expensive either. I often get students to bring their own headphones, but for students who don't have them, we just tend to have a bit of a supply of real cheapy headphones that they can use just so they can hear what they're doing. Now I'm going to switch over to Adobe Audition and just give you a bit of an overview of some of the sorts of things which you can do with this application, and go through some basic editing and also some of the more creative sort of things you can do. So here we have the Audition window. And in this window, I've got a sound that's loaded into the screen, and we can see this waveform. And what we're basically seeing here is larger green areas where the sound is loud and smaller areas where the sound is quiet. And I can play that by clicking on my little play button, or I can just press my space bar, and then we get our sound coming through. So hopefully you got that all right.
Sorry, Steve, we are having issues with the audio. So
obviously you can do a little more than just play sounds, and sometimes you might want to do a little bit of editing, maybe trim a little bit of sound off the start, or even just trim it down to a certain selected area that's showing. So I could take that area and say, right, that's all it's showing now. So then based on that, we then have a shorter version of sound with all that blank start and end bit. Now, of course, you can also do various other things with it, like modify the volume of the sound. At the moment, that sound it's got a fair bit of room above and below, so I could go a little bit louder, and I would show students how they could amplify the sound and adjust the volume. And of course, you get some students who want to make it as loud as they possibly can, which is another good reason for using headphones. But students, of course, also like to be creative with what they're doing. And that's where you can get into some of the tools which allow them to really experiment with sounds and do a few different things. One thing I could try, for example, which probably wouldn't work so much for this sound, so I'm just going to get another sound and drop it in here. So here we've got a sound of a horse, and if I get that little bit of a horse sound and see what that sounds like. Now, one thing I could do with that is I could flip it around, see what a horse sounds like backwards.
Steve, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, mate?
A bit of a spooky sort of sound. In addition to that, there's various other things you can do with it. So if you play around with the sounds you've got in here, as students do, once you give them a few little examples of things they can do, then they just tend to hit the ground running, and they really like to get into it and experiment. One example of things which they tend to really enjoy doing is modifying the time and pitch. And Audition has some great tools for doing that sort of thing. So, for example, here I've got my, actually, I won't get that one. I'll get my, yeah, there we go. My stretch and pitch options. So with these options, I can speed up sounds, slow them down, and do all sorts of things with them. So at the moment, I've got my little cat sound. And if I want to speed up, make this, or stretch it out. And if we see how that sounds with my cat. Oh, hang on, I lost my effect there. Let's bring that back up again. So slowing it right down. Likewise, I could do the same thing, speed it up. And what the students really tend to like playing around with is changing the pitch. So if I drop it down, we get a real deep sounding cat. And of course we can go the other way as well. And so these are just some of the, let's play that. Squeaky cat. These are just some of the assorted ways that you can really play with what's there with just one basic sound. And in addition to that, things like adding reverb effects and make it sound like kitty stuck down a well, and all sorts of additional things just from playing around with what tools are available to you. And ultimately, one of the things which really tends to unleash the creativity in students is when they start combining sounds. So there I've got the individual cat sound and the individual horse sound, but what if I combine those? Audition has a multi-track view, and if you're familiar with Photoshop, think of it as being a little bit like the layers in Photoshop, because in Photoshop, or applications similar to that, you can take different pictures and combine them in creative ways. And a multi-track view in an application like Audition allows you to take different sounds and combine them in a similar way. So I'm just going to get a few additional sounds and bring them into Audition here. So let's firstly drop in this lion sound. And we'll zoom in on that a little bit, and let's hear what our lion sounds like. Scary lion. And if I decided to combine that with the cat, I could do that. I could just overlap them a little bit and see how they both sound together. And I could even add the horse and all sorts of other things. So once you get students combining different sounds, then they really start to experiment and just tinker with different things and see what they can come up with. And of course, combining those different sounds in conjunction with also those various editing techniques we had a look at earlier, you can do almost anything. And I often point out to students that if they're Star Wars fans, well, that's pretty much where Chewbacca's language came from, just from the sound engineer combining different animal sounds in different ways and coming up with something that didn't exist. So that's a bit of an example of sort of creativity that they can come up with. Now, one of the more practical things I also had students doing, and there we were just doing more creative things, but one of the more practical things that I also had students doing was looking at how they can edit sounds to fix things up. So for example, I provided them with microphones, and students then recorded themselves speaking. And if you're recording yourself speaking, you always get sounds in the background, someone closing a door, and of course, if you're in a classroom, then there's all sorts of sounds going on around the place. And you might want to clean up some of those sounds. You might want to remove that little sound of a squeaky chair in the background or a car going by. Or if you're outside, the sound of the wind going past your microphone. So Audition has some fantastic tools to help clean up that sort of thing. And one application of that, in addition to students recording themselves talking, is I would get students a recording from an old vinyl record. And of course, when you get an old vinyl record, you often get that scratchy surface sound, that crackly noise. And with this particular record, you can see where the beat from the song starts. And before that, you can see all those bits where there's no music, but it's not quite flat because there's all that extra sound there. Those little crackles, those little pops, and they continue right throughout the record. So you can show students how they can use things like spectral view to actually see those bits in the sound and clean them up and get the recording sounding nice and pristine. And also practicing on their own recorded voice and modifying their sound in a whole variety of ways. And then, of course, they can look at how nicely all of these Adobe applications tie in together, because when they're editing their video in Premiere, they can get their sound clips in Premiere and then use Audition to edit that sound from Premiere and then drop it back into Premiere. So all these applications all fit in rather nicely together. They're all a nice, happy little Adobe family. Now, for anyone who does have Audition and wants to learn a little more about it and get a bit of an intro to it and see how to do some of the sort of things I have been doing, the Adobe Audition website, like most of the Adobe application sites, has some fantastic video tutorials which can teach you the basics and introduce you to some of the tools, and also give you a little bit of an idea of some of the capabilities of this application. And there is also my own tutorials. Some of you out there might be already familiar with my PC tutorials. They get used all over the place. And the latest addition to my tutorials website is a series of auditions, or not auditions, a series of tutorials especially for Adobe Audition. So they join my tutorials for Photoshop and Adobe Animate and Dreamweaver. And they start from beginner. You don't need any prior experience, and you can go there and work through some of these lessons and even use them with your own classrooms and with your own students, because they are intended for student use, and they're not intended for experts, but for people who maybe down the track would like to become experts. And of course, if you'd like any additional information or if you have any questions, you can contact me with my email address that's up on the screen there. Okay, so back to you, Tim.
Thank you, Steve. And we'll just get rid of your slides. Well done, mate. I know we had some audio issues there, and we weren't actually able to hear the playbacks, but you described it so well, and the visuals that you're able to work with in terms of getting the files across to Audition. Then we learned a lot just by listening to the way you were describing it. It's always an issue, isn't it, getting from one audio source through a streaming engine to another. It's like using a codec to read another codec. It gets quite technical, and often there's lots of little issues that go on. So you're a very brave man actually doing demos with audio files through this system, and we appreciate the work that you've done.
Absolutely.
And all of that can be followed with those tutorials I referred to earlier, as well as sample sounds and so on. So for people who want to try it at their own pace, then there's opportunities to do that.
Is the best way to, because I've done a little bit of Googling while you were talking to find them, and is that on your o'neill.com.au page where we can go through and yep, and I found the URL.
PC
so
tutorials, it's one of the first things that comes up after a couple of paid results.
Yep, I've got the direct link to your page right here, so you can pop that in the chat.
Excellent.
There we go.
And Roland from the Philippines is saying, hi, Tim and Aaron. Nice to see this topic being discussed now. Audition is so cool, which it is. It is an amazing application. It's often a hidden application within the Creative Cloud. Hey, quick little story about Audition. I was working with a professional musician a couple of years ago, and they told me that they don't use Audition in their studios. They use Pro Tools, which is the industry standard. So that's fair enough. But they do use Audition for their mastering. And I said, well, why? And he said, because the equivalent mastering filters that are with Pro Tools cost almost $5,000. And yet you're getting just the same quality of mastering from Audition, which we all have anyway, because we all use the Creative Cloud. So we've got it there. So we use Audition for our mastering, but we do use Pro Tools for our editing. So that was a really interesting story to hear from someone who works in that industry. But Steve, I love Audition for podcasting. I love it for doing voiceovers, and I love it just for enhancing any sort of audio that I'm going to bring into a video. And so thank you.
I use it for taking my vinyl records and transferring them all onto my computer.
Very cool. There's so many uses for it. Steve, thank you so much for your contribution. And you are exactly what an Adobe Education Leader is about, where you're going out there, you're doing tutorials, you're putting yourself out in the cloud for people to learn from you. And that's exactly what we're looking for in Adobe Education Leaders. And the first step to becoming an Adobe Education Leader is to become an Adobe Creative Educator. And that might be level 1. That might just be where you stay. But if you do have a passion for teaching about Adobe skills to your fellow colleagues, and you have a network wider than just your school or your faculty, we'd love to consider you to be an Adobe Education Leader like Steve in the future. So thanks again, mate. We appreciate your time.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
We have had over 2,000 teachers who have enrolled in at least level 1 of the Adobe Creative Educator program that I was just talking about before. Please promote this program with your colleagues via adobe.ly/ACE. The focus is not on Adobe skills, but on understanding the importance of creativity in education.
And Dr. Kitchen is running the next Be a Creative Educator course on May 24 at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for anyone who'd like to be guided through the Level 1 course. If you just need that little bit of a helping hand to make sure you get started. We know all have busy lives. More information can be found for that Buddy Up course that Tim does on bit.ly/adobe-edu-creative.
Hi folks, well it's now time to welcome our education thought leader for their 5-minute gem to inspire us and make us think more deeply about the importance of our role as educators.
And our thought leader for this episode of Inject Creativity Live is the wonderful Dan Hassler. Over to you, Dan.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Erin, and thank you everyone for having me again today. My work essentially is based on helping people to thrive. And as a former educator, I come at it with a real sense of, recognizing that there are just certain things which people need just by virtue of being human in order for them to authentically engage. And this idea of student engagement is something that schools are constantly battling with and coming to terms with. So when Tim invited me on to work with you over the course of this year, I thought this is where I want to spend some time and sharing some of my ideas and what the research might suggest and some of the experiences. So if you were in the session that I did a couple of months ago, I spoke a lot about the importance of belonging, a sense of feeling connected and having a sense of, I guess, tribiness. And one thing that I've been riffing on recently is this idea that kids need to feel like the teacher is their ally, that they've got their back. And this isn't true just for kids, of course. It's true for all of us. If we're going to authentically engage in our communities, in our workplace, we need to feel like we belong. So this is actually based on a theory of motivation and psychology called self-determination theory. And I've sort of tweaked it a little bit in the work that I do, but these 4 elements are really essential. So belonging, we spoke about last time. I want to share a couple of thoughts on the importance of purpose in this session, and in the next session, whenever that is in a couple of months' time, I'll be talking a little bit about autonomy, steering clear of mastery for the time being, because I as a former teacher, I know that mastery is very much core business of teachers, helping people to improve. So for me, I just want to share a little bit today on the idea of purpose. And I guess what I'm saying is, how do we answer that eternal question of Miss, why are we doing this? Sir, what's the point in this? And, there's the cliched answer, there's the kind of caricature answer of, because you'll need it when you're older and stuff like this. And what I'd like to do is try and just share one way of thinking about how we might develop a deeper sense of purpose in the work that we're asking the kids to engage in. And I'm not saying that you can do this all the time. So right from the get-go, I'm saying this isn't something you can do all the time. But I am interested in where we might be able to do it a little bit more. And I'm taking the lead from a chap called Berger, who does really interesting work. I think I'm going to get this wrong, but definitely in the States. I think he spends a lot of time in like at the Idaho area, that kind of stuff. But his work is pretty well known in different settings. And he talks about this idea of an audience, creating an audience. And one of the things I thought, which is quite interesting, is how can we create the audience as the purpose? And what I mean by that is, one of the things I've seen to be somewhat true is that if a kid thinks they need to hand something into you, then sometimes, near enough is good enough. But if they're handing something in that's going to be published, and obviously, we're hearing a lot about, the technology possibilities of Adobe, etc., that, if we're going to publish something more broadly to a more authentic audience, then it follows that some kids, not all, but some kids will engage more authentically in that. What I'm interested in is not just the ability to present publicly, but going to that top of the hierarchy pyramid there, or the triangle there, which is this idea of being of service in the world. And when I've done this with different organizations and different schools, sometimes the argument comes back as, yeah, but come on, we can't always change the world all the time. Like not everyone can change the world. That's a pretty big goal. And I always come back with, yeah, you're right. Not everyone can change the world, but everybody can change someone's world. And when you find out who that someone is, it's remarkable the level to which engagement increases. I want to share a story which has nothing to do with technology to just draw this out. It's a story that involves a school out in the western suburbs of Sydney who had a group of kids, about 15, 16-year-old kids, boys particularly, who were somewhat disengaged, and they were causing a bit of drama in and around the school. And so the PE teacher there decided to take the kids out of school just to give the teachers a bit of a break. But also he'd met a person who works at an asylum seeker centre, or a newly arrived Australian centre. And basically they got chatting, and they came up with this idea of taking these kids out of this school where they were causing drama and going and hanging out with these young kids at this refugee centre, with the idea that they would teach the younger kids Australian sports. They'd teach them cricket, they'd teach them touch footy, that kind of stuff. And over a period of time, they developed quite a nice little connection with these kids. After that, it had been going on probably about 6 or 7 months. The people at the centre said, hey, it's fantastic that your lads come and help out with the sport and play with the kids and occupy them. But what would be really useful is if they could help these kids with their reading and their English. And the PE teacher said, yeah, that'd be great, except these kids themselves really struggle with their reading and their English. So we're not quite sure, if that's going to work. But they floated the idea. And the kids, the older lads from the school, were quite keen to help because they kind of built a nice relationship with these younger kids. And what transpired was fascinating. What transpired was that these kids wanted to teach these kids English, and they engaged with the books. They chose books that they were going to read to these kids, but they had to learn to read them properly themselves. And the real interesting part about this is these are the books that if a teacher had given them to read, because they tried in the past through, remedial English classes, or, those classes where they kind of knew they were in the bottom set. But now they're willingly trying to engage with these texts, the simpler texts, the simpler grammar structures and whatnot. And they didn't feel dumb. They felt they could see the real reason for doing it, because they were going to go on Friday and sit with their little mates. And that happened purely by fluke. There was no plan, there was no rhyme or reason to it. It just happened by fluke. What I've done since is deliberately set up those kinds of experiences where, if you go back to the first thing I spoke about last time, creating a sense of tribiness, creating a sense of belonging, creating a sense of real connection between people, so that when we do want to then create a deeper purpose over and above something like just hanging out, just kicking a ball around, they then willingly step into that because of the sense of belonging that they have. I get that that's a little long-winded, and perhaps I've not explained it particularly as well as I might, but the gist of this is that until we really understand the power, and that's what it is, the power of belonging and purpose, then a lot of our efforts and engagement fall short, because we kind of fall into, look, mate, can you just do your work? Just get it done. You have to do it. It's going to be on the test. The government have mandated that this is the curriculum. But I wonder how we can leverage the power of technology and the power of people connection in order to help kids engage not only in their learning but in the world around them, so that they can be of service in the world regardless of what they've been told up until this point about their capabilities or lack thereof. So that is my little riff for this evening. And I will hang around in the Blue Jeans chat afterwards if anyone wants to dig into that in a bit more detail, because 5 minutes isn't super long for me to try and explain what I'm trying to say. So anyway.
Really well, Dan. And what a powerful story, and such a great story to share to teachers who are working with disengaged teenagers on a day-to-day basis, and just to give them some ideas of how they can potentially make a difference, and give those students an incentive to develop themselves. I love it. It's a great story, and we really appreciate your contribution, and the motivation that you provide us is wonderful. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Tim.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
Well, I'm very excited to announce the first official face-to-face Adobe in Education professional learning event since COVID will be taking place in Melbourne on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 8th of June at John Paul College in Frankston.
It really is exciting that Adobe are now starting to get back into face-to-face professional learning events.
Adobe Education leaders Michelle Dennis and Justin DeLacy and Adobe Creative Educator Tanya Moran will be helping me run this event.
Any teacher in the Melbourne area is welcome to join this session. Please let your Melbourne colleagues know all about it.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
Aaron, it's time.
Time for what, Tim?
Time to launch the 2021 Apac Adobe Education Summit.
Yay! This year's Apac Adobe Education Summit will be an online event open to any educator in the sector and level on Wednesday, the 29th of September.
That's right, and it's going to be a wonderful event involving presentations and news from the global Adobe Education team, creative catalyst talks and inspiration from local Adobe Education leaders, and lots more.
It is a free event open to any educator, and you can register your interest to be involved at bit.ly/Adobe-edu-summit-21. Mustn't forget the dashes.
With your colleagues and wider education networks, and keep that day free. It is a school holiday period for most of you. And Aaron, continue on.
If you're a member of the Adobe Education Leader community, there is a special day just for you the day prior on Tuesday, the 28th of September.
And if you're an Adobe Creative Educator or have at least enrolled in Level 1 of the ACE program, there is a Creative Challenge Day for you and the AELs on Thursday, the 30th of September. More information about these extra days will be sent directly to you.
Register now for the summit, and we'll provide more details about the agenda in future episodes of this show.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
If you're on Facebook and you're not already a member of the Australasian Adobe Education Community Facebook group, please join via facebook.com/groups/AUSAEL. Now, Jerry, are we going to get a slide to let people know about that? I know we've got a ticker there. There we go. So
Hey.
facebook.com/groups/AUSAEL.
It's a great way to keep regularly involved with Adobe in education and the wider community.
Aaron, I'm really looking forward to our next Inject Creativity Live event, which will be held on Wednesday, the 2nd of June at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Our AEL presenter will be Adobe Education Leader Dr. Max Schlaser from Swinburne University in Melbourne, who will be focusing on linking Adobe tools to assessment.
Our thought leader for the next episode is AEL and education consultant Paul McLean from New Zealand.
For those watching the recording of this episode, join us live if you can in the future. It is always much more fun and interactive when you are live. And for those of you watching us live, get ready to move over to bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe for our fireside chat, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
And before I play our ending video, let's bring up our guests. They're still sitting there in the green room. I want to thank you guys for your contribution tonight. Much appreciated. Let's bring Jerry up as well for the behind-the-scenes work that he's been doing. You guys are wonderful, and we'll have a quick chat with you guys in the Blue Jeans room as soon as we say goodbye. Erin, thanks again. And
No worries.
see everyone in a couple of weeks.
Take
Well,
care.
folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of Inject Creativity Live. For those who are watching live, join us via bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe for an informal, non-recorded fireside chat to meet and interact with our presenters, as well as complete the feedback form and apply for a professional development certificate. If you are not watching this live, join us live next time. Use this QR code or link to find out more about dates and topics. On behalf of Dr. Kitchen and Erin Raithke, don't forget to keep being creative.